Hello and welcome to another episode of the Launchpad Podcast. This is a weekly conversation highlighting the journey, experience, and wisdom acquired by a professional in higher education. The goal of the Launchpad is to share gems and insights that could be a benefit to higher education professionals working to increase student success through equity. The Launchpad is brought to you by Launch Student Success, and we partner with higher education professionals to launch students into success. Today's guest, I'm really excited for this conversation, is with the amazing brother Charles Williams. Charles Williams is a full-time English instructor at Chaffey College here in Southern California, as well as the co-coordinator of the Umoja program and the faculty advisor for student government. This is a real quick intro because he's going to give us some more insights into his experience. But with that, I want to welcome Mr. Charles Williams. Welcome to the Launchpad, brother.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to be here.
For sure, man. We so excited to have you with us. You know what? So, like we said, these are really short. Strive for 30-minute conversations to really get insights into your path, and so with that, I'm just going to jump right on in. When you were growing up, middle school, high school, what was the environment for you growing up? Were you in a college-going environment? Were you taught about college? What was your experience growing up, middle school, high school?
Great. Yeah, I knew where I was going. I knew I was going to college as soon as I was born, basically, right?
Okay.
My father went to Oakwood University, and so I was going to go to Oakwood University. And that was pretty much locked in. It's a HBCU in Huntsville, Alabama. And that was basically it. So college was not an option. It was a requirement. And pretty much everybody in my community was on the same track. Now, that's a blessing and a curse because it's sort of formulaic, right? And it's a foregone conclusion. So I wasn't open to a lot of resources and a lot of opportunities that I could have had because I just knew, that's what I was going to do. I think a lot of enrollment at HBCUs comes from second generation. So, I don't think I'm that too unique in that area.
Right on. Thank you very much for that. Being that you grew up with a parent who went to an HBCU, were you able to get onto that campus or another campus of an HBCU when you were growing up? Like, did you actually go and see any of the colleges?
Yeah, every year they had an alumni weekend, and I would go just about every year and see the lifestyle. I kind of knew things. My father would take me around and say, this is the dorm we stayed in. He and my mother got married at that campus. And this is where the married couples lived and all that kind of stuff. This is the student store. We would go and snack and things like that. He would show me all of those things. So I had that experience, right? My father played a lot of basketball. So, we spent a lot of time in the gym. It's like, this is the gym, and his friends would say, you're his son. And so I kind of had that introduction to college, and I was pretty locked in as a kid. We're talking 6, 7, 8, 9, it kind of was automatic that way.
Yeah, for sure. So coming up into high school, you started to prepare to apply to colleges. Did you apply to any other schools other than Oakmont University? I'm sorry, Oakwood.
Oakwood, yeah.
Oakwood, thank you.
I don't recall applying to anyone. I was fascinated with Occidental, which is, what is that? It's somewhere near Pasadena or Glendale, I think.
Here in Southern California.
Yeah. It was just weird. It was weird. But I might be getting ahead of the story, but
okay.
But and by the way, I think Obama went there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
right?
He did.
All right. Yeah. Well, let me back up and say that as a kid, I just wanted to be an NBA player. Right? And then this reality hit me, right? And I'm talking about a kid like 7, 8, 9, 10. Like most kids want to be an athlete.
Yeah.
My father played a lot of basketball, and I don't know if your audience knows a lot about basketball, but they probably know enough that my father was 6'5", and my favorite basketball player was somebody by the name of George Gervin. who was 6'7".
The
And
Iceman.
George Gervin, the Iceman, there we go. He was a guard at 6'7". And in the way basketball works, centers are usually taller. And my father, in all of his church leagues and rec leagues, he was 6'5", so he was a center. And that glitch hit me, right? That in this world, centers are 6'5", 6'7", but in the NBA, they're 7 feet. My father would have been just a guard in the NBA. And I realized that, this is a different world, that there's another level out there. And I'm not going to be 6'7", so I need to give up that dream. But really, I think what it instilled within me is that, whenever you enter a community, you got to realize that there's so much more to learn out there. You don't know everything, right? And you end up walking around thinking that you're a big fish in a small pond, and that's a little problematic. So, even with basketball, centers, particularly back then, we're talking about the 70s, they played a style of basketball where they would back you down and post play, right? They don't play that now, right? So my father wasn't even practicing. He and his friends, who were really tall, they were all 6'6". My uncle was 6'6". His friends were all tall. They weren't even practicing the kind of basketball that would get them to the NBA, right? So I learned really early on that you got to be careful. Don't think that you know everything. There's more out there. I'll tell you another story. My mother sang in churches a lot.
Right.
And I grew up in Chicago, and she, I don't know if you ever recall, like, tent efforts. Like, preachers would sometimes have tents, and they were put up in Black neighborhoods, and they would just invite people to the community, right? My mother would sing at these, and sometimes they'd be in these really wild neighborhoods. And she's doing this all summer long. I'm with her most nights. And there were these two brothers who were assigned to watch the tent all night, right? So nobody would vandalize it and things like that. And one of them turned out to be a preacher. The other took more creative routes for his career paths. But it's the creative one that I'm going to talk about now. So my parents would let me bring comic books to just kind of entertain me while my mother did her thing. And so I'm reading Superman and I'm reading Spider-Man, and I'm thinking, like, this is the greatest world. Wow. And then this one guy, one of the guys who worked at the tent effort, again, they were high school, maybe age. They were older Black men, and they were just saying, okay, great, we like you, this is cool, but let us hip you on to something else. And he showed me Black Panther, the Black Panther comic book. And it blew my mind, right? Because I didn't know the Black Panther even existed. And so here's just another one of those instances where I thought I knew everything. I thought Spider-Man was the center of the universe. I thought Superman was the coolest guy on the planet, right? And then boom, there was Black Panther. I remember he showed me a Black Panther was on the cover. He was tied to a burning cross, and the Ku Klux Klan was about to set him on fire, right? That was the big theme of the Black Panther comic book, right? Black Panther was fighting the Ku Klux Klan, right? And I'm thinking, oh, how is somebody going to fight the Ku Klux Klan? Who does this? Right? That was the first encounter I ever had with somebody who got one up on the Ku Klux Klan until Richard Pryor in that movie with Cicely Tyson. I can't remember the name of that movie, but you might recall what I'm talking about.
I recall it. I don't have the title, but yes.
But again, there's always more to learn out there, right? And that's kind of what I was picking up as a young kid. I remember we moved from Chicago to I did a year in Oakland, and then I did a year in Orange County. And I'm in school, and I'm one of two. My freshman year of high school, I'm one of two Black males in this high school. And we had a field trip to the beach. And, it was cool. It was a great experience at this school. Then we get to the beach. Everybody just hops in the water and swims to the buoy. And it blew my mind, right? I grew up in Chicago. Yeah, you can learn. I can swim in a pool, but you put me in open water, it's a totally different experience. And so, again, it's just one of these things where I learned that there's more out there, and I need to always be open, right? Never assume that I know everything. And so I was at a high school where everybody seemed to know how to swim, and everybody seemed to know how to swim very well, right? So that was a shock to me.
Right? Yeah. Wow.
I don't remember exactly where we were going with that, but
no. You're just talking about just your change of seeing things different, your perspective
Yeah.
from basketball, right?
Right.
From
Right.
thinking that you were going to go to basketball. So that's
Yeah.
huge.
Well, yeah.
If you don't,
Go ahead.
oh, please, no, please.
No, no, no. You go. You go. I got more. I got.
Just to that thought of, um, you talked about letting go of the dream of basketball,
Yeah.
right? Because a lot of us that
Right.
came up playing sports, at some point in time, it ends.
Yeah.
What helped you with transitioning your mindset, even at that early age?
Well, one of the things that might be coming across is my family moved a lot.
Hmm.
And so the last 5 years, I spent 4 different schools. I went to 3 different high schools. So continuity was a problem.
Okay.
So it was pretty easy to let go of something like that. Um, and it's a conversation I have with lots of students that there's a reality here, right? That um, if you want to have a world class experience, then you need to have world class actions, right? And
Hmm.
so my students who are on the basketball team, or even those who are on the football team, I have this kind of conversation with them that there's some limitations, there's some realities, and I'm not trying to deter anybody's dreams,
Hmm.
but they got to step their game up if that's what they wanted to do. Like if I really was serious about basketball, I have to step my game up, and I just felt like it was just not going to go that way. So it was pretty easy for me to look into other things,
Yeah.
and what you might know from sports experiences, particularly whether it's a church league or a city league or a rec league. People who participate in these things, they have lives, they have other jobs. So I was
Yeah.
seeing great basketball players who had careers that had
Yeah.
nothing to do with basketball. They were bankers, they were truck drivers, bus drivers. They
Yeah.
did other things. So it was very easy for me to say, okay, this does not have to be the pathway forward, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
Right
so
on. Right
yeah,
on.
yeah,
Yeah. Thank you for that. Right on. Okay. So then going into college,
yeah,
you decided to go to Oakwood University?
yeah, yeah. And so let me even back up to my last. I
Please.
graduated from Inglewood High School, and my senior year, I worked on campus for the first half of the year as I don't even exactly know the name of the office in a high school, but it's where they keep all the catalogs. It's like a transfer center in a high school,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
And one of my jobs was to organize all the catalogs for all the schools. And I think that's where I became fascinated with Occidental. I just think they had a nice brochure and nice sales pitch. And so I'm
Right.
organizing all of this stuff. But the whole time, I'm just locked in. I'm like, it doesn't even matter what I'm reading about. I'm going to Oakwood, just like my father. And to make it even worse, um, because he would take me places, and his friends would say, "So where are you going to go to school?" And I would say, "I'm going to go to Oakwood." And then they say, "Well, what are you going to study?" My father studied accounting. He was an accountant, so I'd say accounting, right? And so you see
Mm-hmm.
a lack of creativity here, right? A lack of originality here. I mean, I'm just sort of following in his footsteps, and obviously I'm an English instructor, so at some point I changed. It just ran into the rocks at a certain point.
Got you. Thank you very much for that. So coming into Oakwood, so now you're coming from Inglewood, California, going back to
Huntsville,
Alabama,
Alabama. Yeah,
Huntsville, Alabama.
yeah,
Whoo! Now
yeah.
I talk about my man. I went from L.A. to UC Santa Barbara, two hours up the road. That was a huge culture shock. What was it like going back to Huntsville?
It was a little different. It was a culture shock. There's a scene in School Days where the college students, I think they go to like a variant of McDonald's, and it's
Hmm.
Lawrence Fishburne's friends, and they meet Samuel Jackson's friends, and it
Yeah.
was, you had a little bit of that. You had a little bit of the locals always kind of looked at you a little bit odd because they know you're just moving through, and you're
Mm.
moving on with your life. So there was a little bit of that, but everybody was from somewhere else. People were from the East Coast. People were from Chicago. People were from California. They were from all over the country, the
Yeah.
South, and so like most HBCUs. And so it was a wonderful experience. Unfortunately, I do not remember much about my academics because I was not about accounting at all. Right?
Mm.
I did well, and I learned the importance of collaboration and teamwork. but my heart wasn't in accounting at all. And, I'll tell you another story. It's probably the beginning of my third year as an accounting major. That's right. I did 3 years just sleepwalking through academics, basically. Right.
Mm.
And I wasn't alone. A lot of people were doing this as well.
Yeah. I did it too.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. And the first day of the fall semester, or it might have been quarters, I took an elective, African American literature. And the first day I walked in the classroom and the teacher said, all right, sit down, we're going to watch a film. We watched a cinematic version of Richard Wright's story, Almost a Man, starring LeVar Burton.
Hmm.
And it lasted maybe the majority of the class. At the end of class, the teacher said, okay, that's it. I'll see you next time. But your homework is to come back and tell us, everybody find out a little bit about Richard Wright. Now, I'm sitting there watching this film, and I think it's available on YouTube. People can watch it. It's not that great, but it blew my mind because it was just a great story, I thought. And I'm walking back from the class to the library and then on the way to the dorm. And I stopped at the library. I did all this research on who Richard Wright was. And I was thinking, oh, my, people live like this. People make a living off writing. People write stories. People talk about people writing stories. I had no idea that this kind of world existed. And I was thinking, this is so cool. It's so much cooler than accounting. But I didn't put one and one together yet. And I spent a couple hours in the library. I never did that, right? Just researching and reading about this writer and reading about his life, the people who he influenced him. I said, this is just great stuff. I can't wait for my next class. So I leave there and I go to my dorm and there's a note on the message board. This is, before email and texting and all that.
Yeah.
And it says, call dad, call your father. I called my father. My father said, hey, money's running low. The school project, we're going to have to figure out another plan because the money is out. And normally, when my friends, if you've been to a HBCU or anybody in college has had financial problems, and that's generally a sad moment when you have to drop out of school because you're out of money, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, this is the greatest thing in the world because now I can figure out what I want to do. I can explore this topic, find out more about Richard Wright and Richard Wright's relationship with Ralph Ellison and James Baldwin and all these other, and Jordan Hurst, just all this kind of stuff. Langston Hughes, right? So all this kind of stuff was things that I just wanted to explore. So my father said that, and I'm like, all right, that's perfectly fine. He felt bad, but I didn't, And, I took a couple years off and did a whole lot of reading.
Yeah. Man. Okay. Yeah. So you didn't jump to the third year.
I know, huh? I know.
No. So let me ask you this question, just in regards to your going to Oakwood. Can you share with me and share with us just someone that was influential and made an impact on your transition into Oakwood? And it doesn't necessarily have to be someone that was a faculty, staff, leader. It could be a student. It could be, but just in that process. And it's good to have the context of knowing just kind of as you were coming in, you weren't really that focused on what you went there for.
Right. Well, I'll tell you too. I have an uncle who he was a preacher, youth leader, ran camps, and he was just, arguably the most well-read person I knew at the time.
Okay.
And one day he came over the house, and I was back from college, and I had a poster of Malcolm X, that famous image of Malcolm X with the M1 rifle looking out the window. And he said, nice. Do you know anything about it? That blew me away, right? Just that question, because no, I didn't know the context, right? Right? I didn't know who he was looking out the window for, right?
Yeah.
And so that sent me searching. Like, oh, okay. Let me figure out more, and then that led me to a whole realm of study. But let's even back up to my first year of Oakwood, where I'm in a first year composition course, and I'm sitting in the back with my friends. We're just back there. And the teacher says, well, I want to share a paper from one of you that I think is pretty good. And let me read it. She starts reading it. And I turn to my partners and say, I think that's my paper. And she goes on and she finishes and says, it's Charles Williams' paper. And I'm like, they're looking at me like, Charles, you don't even study. You don't even care about this stuff, right? And I'm thinking, I don't even care about this stuff. But somebody cared enough about me to read my stuff closely, and they think it's pretty good. And that's it. That just dropped a bug in me. And so I was an accounting major, but always trying to publish little essays. Right? So I didn't see that I was moving into the world of English. I just kept on going. Accounting, intro to accounting, cost accounting, advanced accounting, all this kind of stuff, and not really realizing that there were experiences that were preparing me for something else.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. You remember the professor's name?
Henson. Professor Henson. I never saw her again after that first. Well, I think I might have saw her once, but I never had a chance to go back and tell her because my parents live in Huntsville. To tell her that, hey, you played an impactful role. Just like the African-American literature teacher. I don't even remember his name. I just know that assignment, exploring who Richard Wright was, kind of shook me up. And if you don't mind me telling another story about Richard Wright.
Please.
So eventually I leave Oakwood, and I like to say I was just traveling the world, which did some moderate traveling, just trying to figure stuff out. And a friend of mine who I was hanging out with, traveling the world, who also dropped out of college, said, you should go back to school. And I'm looking at him like, well, I should go back. Well, maybe you should too. But he was older, and I always took advice from him. So I said, all right, well, what should I do? And he says, well, what do you like to do? And I said, I like to read and I like to write. He says, well, be an English major. So that's how I stepped into that. And the woman I was dating at the time, who eventually becomes my wife, I told her, maybe this is around Christmas. And she's looking at me like, he's got potential, but he needs to step his game up. And so she did some research and found out that Cal State San Bernardino was admitting students in the winter. So if you're serious about this, you should hop in January, right? And so, I went there and got in and started in January. And one of the first classes I took was analysis of fiction. I think it's called analysis of prose fiction. And one of the early readings in the course was Richard Wright's Almost a Man. And I wrote this paper, just a short response that we had to share with the class.
Yeah.
And here's a class, it was a white teacher. I think there was one more black student in the class. And I read it as the story as if it's a uplifting ending. There's a happy ending. And the whole class saw it totally different. They're all telling me like, no, this is a tragedy. And I'm like, no, this is an uplifting story. And so it was another one of those moments where I realized that, not everybody sees the world the way I do, right? I have to be considerate of other views. But it's also one of those moments where, they talk about in teaching generative themes, right? That you've got to find ways to get students in. And so it was wonderful that was an early assignment because I really bought into the class and I really bought into the experience. And I ended up writing my paper, making the case on why this was a positive ending. And the teacher came to me afterwards and was like, okay, I got it. You made a good case. And so all of these things just helped me build confidence and make me feel like, all right, I'm on the right path. I'm having fun with school. I'm no longer just floating and walking by. I'm investing in every assignment, every class discussion. I'm not just sitting in the back because I don't want to be seen. I'm sort of sitting in the back because maybe I'm a little taller than everybody else, right? But I'm totally engaged in all the classwork.
Amazing. Right on. So you finish up at Cal State San Bernardino?
Yes.
Okay. Did you immediately go into grad school after that? Can you tell us about that transition? Did you go into professional realm for a little bit? What'd you do?
I was getting married, and I have no idea really what I'm doing with my life. and there was a flyer on the wall that said something about grad school. And I said, oh, why don't I try that? You know? And so that's kind of how I stumbled into an MA in English composition. I really didn't even fully understand what composition meant. I didn't know that it was primarily, about teaching and writing. I just thought it was a MA in English and it was going to be literature based. But so I got into that, and my first year, again, I'm one of two Black students in the program, and I'm excited, but there's a whole new language going on. And we had this young teacher who was pretty cool, and he was always throwing around terms, post-structuralism, structuralism, a lot of French terms, and I'm thinking, oh, am I in the right place? This is really above my abilities. And I'm doing the reading, but I just feel like I'm just not really able to keep up. And plus, all these other guys, there were a bunch of other guys in the class, mainly white guys, who acted like they knew what was going on, like they knew these terms, And even this guy he was a new teacher at the school, and he was into mountain biking. And at the time, I was into road biking. And so we just had a brief conversation, and I realized that, man, I can't even be friends with him on a social level because he's on a different type of bike than I am. So I'm just losing all the way around. And then I noticed all these white guys, my classmates, they all bought mountain bikes to go hang out with them, and they're riding with them, and they're just bonding. And I'm feeling like I'm just so behind. Now, at the time, I was teaching alternative ed high school, and which is grueling work, but I quit not because it was grueling. I quit because I wanted to take a night job, sort of at a treatment facility or group home kind of place, where I just sat in a booth all night so I could study. And so that summer, in between my first and second year of grad school, I just studied all night. Now, my shift started at 10. I'm reading from 10 to like 6, right? Because I said, I'm going to come back sharp. I'm going to come back ready. And I did. I came back really sharp, so sharp that these white guys I was hanging out with, they were like, hey, we were faking the whole time. We didn't really know. We were just kissing up. We were, one of them told me this. He was like, we were just throwing these terms around, trying to, banter back and forth with the teacher to fit in. But we still don't know what this stuff means. You're over here trying to be serious. And then that was a lesson there for me as well. This whole notion of an imposter syndrome. It's like everybody's faking it. Right? Yep. And so I walk into almost any environment, and there's little intimidation because I figure if I'm nervous, everybody's nervous, right?
Yeah.
If I'm underprepared, everybody's underprepared, right? And so that's the mindset that I have. In fact, there's a clip on Michelle Obama talking about that, about imposter syndrome, and she's realizing that she's pointing that same thing out, that they don't know what they're doing either. So, we walk in feeling that we don't belong in certain arenas. No, that's never the case. We got it. So,
yeah, man, thank you. Knowing that you were going into that grad program, thinking it was just an MA in English and not knowing there was the teaching and composition portion of it, what started you on the road towards teaching?
There were internships that became available. And so that's when I began to kind of figure things out. One of the things I like to do when I teach is I like to help students contextualize where they are, right? Get a framework of what you're doing, why you're doing it. Because I was so clueless, taking those accounting classes, stumbling through English classes, not really knowing what I'm going to do with a BA in English, and then stumbling into MA program. It was the second year that I realized that community colleges primarily teach writing classes. Right? They offer more writing classes than they do literature courses. So I realized, okay, I stepped into the right thing. There's work. And there was an internship at RCC, Riverside Community College, that was going to prepare me to do that kind of work. And I took that. I also did an internship at Cal State San Bernardino. I worked in the writing center, tutoring, so I was doing all of these things. I ran summer bridge programs for Cal State San Bernardino for a couple of years. And so I was doing all of these things that would prepare me. and I'm doing them pretty fast, kind of in a 2-year period. And then Chaffey College needed an English teacher, right? Maybe they needed a person of color, probably, right? But one of the teachers was going to do another assignment, so a class opened up, and she said, "Hey, you want to teach my class?" And I taught her class, did fairly well. A position opened up, I got it, and I've been at Chaffey roughly ever since 2000, right? So that's kind of how I work.
You've been at Chaffey for 24 years.
Yeah, I like to say 2000, but if you say 24, okay. You know, I mean, if you want to just rub it in my face, yeah.
Come on, man.
That's a long time.
What do you mean? That's amazing. Here's the thing. That's amazing because you have been literally, man, impacting lives for 24 years in the California community college system. That's huge.
Well, when you put it like that, yeah, okay.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Right? That's where that's just such great work. And so, you know, even though you are giving us insights and wisdom today, I want to acknowledge you and thank you for your service, man, and everything that you are doing to bring your passion. Because obviously, just in this conversation, we can tell that your work is your passion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Let me ask this last question, or maybe a couple last questions. If there was one thing that you would share with to help or to give insight for leaders, faculty, and staff in thinking about building trust with today's students, what would you share?
I probably share a little bit of complexity theory specifically in terms of education. And complexity theory is based on this notion: when it comes to students, intervene however and whenever. Right? Don't rely on any one single thing. Try a barrage of things. And it's the interplay of that barrage of things that might help a student succeed. So it's not tutoring in a classroom. It's tutoring and the teacher being friendly, right? It's not just tutoring and friendliness. It might be, a visit to a college they might want to transfer to. It's a variety of things that work. And a lot of times we get caught up on focusing on what are best practices. Just give me those and I'll do those. And that's really not the case. It may not be just a best practice. It might be best practices plus some good practices plus some emergent practices that you are experiencing in the process. So that's not the answer that people really want to hear. People want something they can bottle and sell, and just give me that one thing. I'll do that. I'll try it and move on. But oftentimes we find that one thing and it doesn't work, and then we just quit on the whole project. We start blaming students and saying, "Well, I tried that. Those students didn't like it. See, they don't like to learn." And that's not necessarily the case. The case is try a variety of things, and some of them might stick.
Hey, man. Good sir.
All right.
It's called the mic drop right there. That was the mic drop right there, man. Brother Charles Williams, thank you so much for being with us on the Launchpad today, man. You have literally, I know for certain, given us, all of us who are watching, something that we can take away and apply today, man. We, with Launch, we believe information is great, application is better, and you have definitely blessed us with some great stuff today. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. It's my pleasure.